For the cheapest coins with fast delivery and quick customer support, check out my sponsor, Red Zone Coins, and use code SWIFT at checkout for 20% off.
So family, and today I'm coming back at you guys with another Madden 20 video on the channel, and in today's video we have another episode of the MUT Weekly Roundup on the channel, a series in which I go over all Madden 20 news and Madden news in general that happened in the past week. Now in today's episode, there isn't really a ton of Madden 20 Ultimate Team stuff. We haven't gotten too much content recently, so instead of talking about Madden 20 today, I'm going to talk about Madden 21 and the beta that I was able to play over the last weekend. I'm going to give my impressions on the game, talk about some stuff that I like, and talk about some stuff that I didn't like, and then I'm going to also talk about an ability called Film Study, explain what it is, and why the whole community is kind of up in shambles with a bunch of different opinions about that ability. Now before we hop into this one, everyone be sure to leave a like down below if you do enjoy this series, and I just want to say that I really do appreciate how loyal all of you guys have been to me and my channel throughout the entire year. It's been an absolutely awesome ride so far, and I'm stoked to see how it goes in Madden 21. But without further ado, let me hop into my opinions on the Madden 21 beta, and I'm going to start it off by talking about the running game, because I know a lot of people are probably curious to see if the running game did get nerfed in the next Madden. So in terms of the rushing game, I would definitely say there was a bit of a nerf in Madden 21. Right off the bat, I feel like defensive linemen were getting more block sheds, whether that was on outside running plays or interior rushing plays. Defensive linemen actually got sheds, whereas I feel like in this year's game, the only time my defensive linemen really got sheds is when they had abilities on them, so that they could shed on inside or outside running plays. But I feel like in Madden 21, defensive linemen were shedding much more frequently and kind of just pushing their offensive linemen back into the backfield a tiny bit sometimes, which just wreaks havoc for the running back and makes it much harder to control where you're going, because sometimes an O-lineman gets pushed back into you and you have to totally change where you're planning on running. Now, one other thing that I did notice about the running game was the movement felt a little bit weird to me. I know a couple of other YouTubers have talked about this, but I feel like the movement was a little bit weird. It was almost like I was running in quicksand sometimes. Cuts were a little bit harder to make. Maybe that's just because we didn't actually get to play with a top tier running back in the beta, but I just felt like cutting and kind of running in general wasn't as smooth as it was this year. I feel like running the ball was actually super smooth in Madden 20, so hopefully that's just because of the fact that we weren't getting to play with really high overall running backs and not because of the fact that it's coded that way into the game. But those were a couple of my takes about the rushing game. I would say definitely block sheds are much better, and it's a little bit harder to run the ball just because of the stick work seeming to be a little bit more clunky to me, so that's definitely going to make it much harder to run the ball in Madden 21. Now, last little piece of information I can give you guys about the running game is I believe the pursuit angles still haven't really been totally fixed for Madden 21. Now, if you guys don't know what pursuit angles are, that's essentially the angles that the players other than their user take to get to the ball carrier in the running game. So let's say, for example, I was using on Ryan Shazier, then we'd have Patrick Willis, who would also be another linebacker, roaming free in the middle of the field, and pursuit angles are what angle is he going to take to get to the ball carrier in the backfield. I still feel like they don't use the best pursuit angles out there, and if you guys do know, in this year's game, kind of swerving with your running back to glitch out the pursuit angles is really popular, so I'm definitely hoping that they kind of tweak pursuit angles a tiny bit, but otherwise I think the run game has definitely been nerfed a pretty solid amount heading into Madden 21. Now next up, let's talk about the passing game a little bit, because as the running game kind of got nerfed a tiny bit, I feel like the passing game was improved a little bit as well. So starting it off, when it comes to your actual quarterback releases have been sped up, and essentially what that means is you're more likely to be able to get a pass off when either your opponent's blitzing you or when you just have someone bearing down on you in the pocket. The releases are faster, meaning you can get throws off quicker. Now hopefully that kind of makes the Send 7 and just blitz everyone defense a little bit less popular heading into Madden 21, because I know in this year's game, going against someone that just sends absolutely everyone is super annoying, because honestly a lot of the time you have to make a read super quickly because your quarterback is going to wind up for a pretty solid length of time, especially in this year's game. So hopefully now that they've made it, the releases go a little bit faster, you're going to be able to get the ball out with pressure in your face, and it's going to make it much easier to throw when you're going up against the blitz. Now I think one other thing that is also going to make it easier when you throw going against the blitz is improved rack animations. Now rack animations are a really discounted part of Madden 20 that have been totally broken and have really contributed to the entire Send 7 meta on defense. Let's say for example you go against someone who's just sending a lot of players and they have basically their whole defense in deep blue zones. If I try to throw a flat route or an out route, when my player catches the ball, they don't really turn upfield very quickly. They kind of take like 3 or 4 steps before they start going upfield, which makes it really hard to throw the short passing game, whether your opponent's blitzing you or whether you just want to throw short passes in general. So they have made it so that rat catches are going to be much better in this year's game. It's going to be much easier to kind of turn upfield more fluidly and start to get more yards after catch, which is definitely super important in making the passing game and kind of the short passing game in general much more effective. I think that was very needed, to be honest with you guys. Those are kind of 2 things that are going to counter your opponent blitzing a lot of people. Now there's actually one other note that I want to talk about when it comes to passing the ball. This is something I haven't really heard many people touch on, and that's the fact that for me, I don't know if it was just me, but pass leads didn't really seem to work that well. If I wanted to like pass lead upfield to get it over like a cornerback's head, that just didn't work. Or if I wanted to even pass lead downfield to get it in front of a safety, neither of those really worked that well for me. So that was super frustrating. I'm not sure if you need an ability to be able to do that now or if it was just weird for me, but honestly, pass leads weren't working, which is definitely super annoying. And honestly, I kind of took it for granted because I just knew that pass leading was so helpful in this year's game. So I kind of just took it for granted that we could do it in Madden 21. I don't know if they took that out on purpose or if it was just a mistake, but I'd love to see that be back in the game without needing to put an ability on your quarterback. Maybe you're going to need to do that in Madden 21. I hope that's not the case, because that'll definitely just be an annoying place to have to waste an ability almost just to be able to pass lead. I feel like everyone should be able to pass lead without needing an ability. It's things that all quarterbacks in the NFL can do pretty regularly, so hopefully that ends up getting fixed before the game does release. Now next up, let's talk about the defensive side of the ball when it comes to passing, because we kind of covered offense and defense for running. Now let's talk about the defensive side of the ball when it comes to passing. And one thing that was definitely kind of a unique change was zone drops. There's a lot of mixed feedback on whether they work, whether they don't work, and essentially what zone drops are they're a feature that allows you to choose the depth or the drop of your corners. So let's say, for example, I set it to 25 yards for a cloud flat, then my corners would drop back almost 25 yards after the ball is snapped, which would allow me to take away routes like corners or crossing routes, which are definitely going to be popular or were popular in Madden 20. So it's definitely a way to kind of stop rollout corners a little bit. I think that the zone drops work decently well for me. Sometimes they didn't work, sometimes they did. It almost seemed like they only work for certain zones, because you can actually navigate into the coach adjustments menu and change it for each type of zone. So you can change it for like curl flats and you can change it for like cloud flats, and I feel like some of them definitely worked better than others. So hopefully those are all working and all working properly by the time the game does release. I think that's definitely a positive improvement, because I feel like you can kind of have your corners play a little bit deeper, and then you can worry about maybe the shorter stuff with your user, or you can actually bait your opponent. You can make your corners play deeper for a few plays and then switch it right away. Maybe they throw an out route and you're able to get a pick six. So I think it's good that they have these zone drops. It should be able to create kind of like a chess match between you and your opponents, but we'll see how they end up playing when the game does release. Now also in terms of zones on defense, I feel like zones were okay when it comes to like the middle of the field type of stuff, but the deeper zones were really not that good at all, especially in a cover 3. I feel like there was a ton of cover 3 bombs in this game, so I think cover 2 is definitely going to be the meta, especially because you can actually kind of adjust where you want your corners to play, but cover 3 really wasn't working that well for me. There was a lot of ways to beat it deep. Deep zones weren't working that incredibly well, but honestly, to offset that a little bit, quarterbacks weren't able to throw it incredibly deep either. I feel like there was a max throwing distance which was reached pretty early on the field, and if you tried to throw it past that max throwing distance, you were going to get a really bad pass and it was probably going to be intercepted. So kind of a double-edged sword there. And yeah, next up, let's talk about the final thing about passing defense, and this is probably the biggest and most important feedback part of the entire game, and that is usering as your mid linebacker felt super weird. And honestly, again, I would say this is a bit of a double-edged sword, but let me explain essentially how it felt. It honestly felt similar to how it felt when you were running with your running backs. It felt a little bit clunky, and honestly, you didn't have enough speed to catch up with some receivers as they were running slant routes or an in route or a post route. Let's say I was to follow a slant, I simply wouldn't be able to do that, and you also aren't really going to be able to get off routes and kind of bait as easily. So it's definitely going to improve the skill gap, because you're going to have to be much smarter and much more efficient with your movement, because you simply can't move as far. Now, I do think it's a realistic change, to be honest with you, because obviously in the NFL, linebackers aren't as fast as wide receivers. Usually they can't run with wide receivers, so that's one thing that makes it realistic. Also, I think if zone drops start to play well, and if you're able to actually cover up some of those corner routes and kind of lock up the outside of the field by adjusting your zone drops, then it would honestly be a little bit too easy on defense if your user was also incredibly good, because the outside of the field would be locked up with zone drops, and then then you could cover the middle of the field. So I honestly don't think it's a terrible change, to be honest with you guys. I'm hoping that they just make it a little bit more fluid. I feel like the fluidity part is the most annoying, like change of direction and trying to lurk and bait on routes. I think that's the most annoying part to me. I don't mind that it felt a little bit slower, because I think the slowness is kind of a bit more realistic, but I hope that they improve the change of direction, because that would only improve the skill gap. You can kind of change and get onto routes that you're still going to be kind of close to each other, but right now you obviously can't run with the route, but it's also kind of hard to like switch between routes in the middle of the field. So I'm hoping that they do end up making that one tweak. I don't need them to make users faster, but I just hope they made them a little more agile and a bit easier to change directions with. But those are honestly my opinions on the gameplay. Next up, let's talk about this ability called Film Study, which a lot of people have been talking about. I'm going to explain what it is, and essentially what Film Study is if your opponent runs the same play on you 3 times and you have the ability called Film Study, which you can put on like you would put on Enforcer, it's going to show your opponent's play on the field. It'll show their play art when you're open for your play art, and you'll be able to see exactly what they are going to run. Now, there have been definitely a lot of opinions on this. I don't really have a specific opinion on it yet, because I feel like it wasn't crazy overpowered, but I could also see where a lot of the competitive players would be upset about this. Now, in my opinion, if someone runs a play 3 times or more and they're just spamming the same play over and over again, like let's say they're running stretch, for example, you probably know it's coming before they even snap the ball, so the ability shouldn't really be that helpful, and that's going to be more of like a casual environment when your opponent's running just stretch over and over again, or just running one passing play over and over again. You know who he's going to throw it to already, so this ability shouldn't really make a difference when it comes to that. So I feel like it won't affect casual games as much as it's going to affect like good player versus good player games, because a lot of the times in Madden, I'll honestly come out in like the same play, and then I'll just make a lot of different adjustments, or I'll have multiple different setups for one play. Let's say I have like one setup which is going to beat it to like the right side of the field, then I have another setup that's going to beat it on the left side of the field. My opponent doesn't know which one I'm going to run, so now of course if they do have the Film Study ability, they'll see which one I'm going to run and they're going to be able to stop that. So in my opinion, it's going to make it much harder for like good player versus good player games, which I don't know if that's a good thing, to be honest with you. We'll have to see how it plays throughout the year. Obviously EA can easily tweak this ability by making it like you have to run 5 of the exact same play before it'll show up on the field, so it'll definitely be a really quick change once EA does get feedback from the community when the game drops, but definitely an interesting ability. I don't think it's terrible yet, and I think it'll be really easy to fix in case EA does need to tweak something, because again, it'll be like so simple. They can just make it 4 or 5 plays that your opponent's gonna have to run the exact same play of before it pops up on the field. But yeah, that's my impressions on the beta. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you thought of the beta, if you were able to play it, down below in the comment section, and if you did play it, do you agree with the stuff that I said? Maybe I missed out on a couple things. Also, let me know what you guys think about the ability Film Study down below. Again, just want to say thank you again for all the support that you guys have shown me. You guys are so loyal. We honestly have like one of the most loyal Madden YouTuber fan bases, I feel like, and it's absolutely incredible to see. So thank you guys so very much for that. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and until next time, I'm out. Peace.
So,